in action all over the world.
In 1945, the war was winding to a close. Happy distinguished himself with his far-sighted work for international harmony. Around this time, he was offered a new job. Happy hated to leave the Senate, but the baseball owners offered what he considered the best job in America and a substantial pay raise.
Crackerjack here. Crackerjack. Hello, my dear. Hey, Pearl. How are you?
Chandler was offered the commissionership because as a senator, he supported baseball during the war. Happy's predecessor had been dignified and aloof. Happy was open, accessible, and affable. He loved going to games and mixing with players and fans. Happy's era was marked by post-war growing pains. GIs were returning, players were threatening to strike, the Mexican League was siphoning players, and there was the controversial issue of mixing the all-white boys of summer with black players.
My predecessor was Judge Kennesaw Mountain Landis, and he wouldn't let them play. If they were black, they were automatically disqualified. He died in 1944, and just before he died, they asked him again about it, and his answer was, everything's been said about this, it's going to be said. The answer is no.
In 1946, in a secret meeting, the owners voted 13-1 against mixing the color lines. Happy counted the ballots. The only vote for integration came from Branch Rickey of the Brooklyn Dodgers. Rickey wanted to bring Jackie Robinson to the Dodgers. The owners opposed the idea. If Jackie was to play, Rickey needed the approval and support of the commissioner.
So Rickey called me on the telephone as soon as I got home and said, I've got to see you. And I said, all right, come on. Came down here. I told him, I said, I've thought about this thing many times. I was on the Senate Military Affairs Committee all during the Second World War and had opportunity to observe the character and conduct of American soldiers all over the world. I saw black men and white men and red men and yellow men and all kinds of colors. I wasn't present when the Lord gave out the colors, and I don't know why, but that's the way it is. They're colored. And they were offered to fight and die for the freedom of mankind. And I just can't believe that when a fellow offers his life for the freedom of mankind, when he comes back home, he's told he can't play the national pastime, national sport. And I said, I think this thing ought to be ended. And you bring him in, and I'll approve of the transfer of his contract from Montreal to Brooklyn, and we'll make the fight. The umpires hated him, and he didn't help himself some. He had a chip on his shoulder, and you can't blame him for that because he thought everybody was against him, and nearly everybody was. Dixie Walker told me, for example, he wasn't going to play with him. Ben Chapman, another Alabama boy, said, wait till he comes to Philadelphia, I'll make trouble for him. And I sent him a telegram. I said, if you make trouble for him, I'll make trouble for you.
Jackie endured untold humiliation as he opened the door for other blacks. Player by player, the top black athletes were signed by teams trying to stay competitive. When blacks and whites played together in America's pastime, this was a major crack in the wall of segregation. It advanced civil rights significantly in America. Happy went against the wishes of most owners, players, and fans in signing Jackie's contract. It was a decision a weaker commissioner may have delayed.
It was decision time, and somebody had to make it. I was the only fellow on earth that could.
Any notions the owners may have held that Happy was a smiling, malleable figurehead soon evaporated. Happy was driven by his love for baseball. He worked hard to make it the sport he imagined it to be as a boy. He barred players from racetracks and suspended street tough Leo Durocher for running with the wrong crowd. He set up a pension fund to protect aging players, and when he found Babe Ruth alcoholic and penniless, he gave the Babe a day in the sun again at Yankee Stadium. The fans cheered Ruth, but booed Happy. Fans were angry over his suspension of Durocher. Happy was never fully appreciated by the East Coast city slickers.
People in the Northeast said, gee, why is that person so happy? Why is he so pleasant? Why is he talking so long and being so friendly? There is that sort of Northeast suspicion of that, maybe for good and for bad. And he probably rubbed people the wrong way.
I first met Happy in 1951 at the Broadway Central Hotel in New York City. We were celebrating the 75th anniversary, I guess, of the National League. And Happy was in his last months as commissioner. I went to the party and I met him, and I was enchanted by him. I really was enchanted by him. I was enchanted by his charm, his good humor, he was fun to be with. I thought it then, and I haven't changed my thinking about Happy in the 35 ensuing years. But I didn't see him again for 18 years. By that time, I was commissioner. Happy had gone back to Kentucky, become governor again. Had been forgotten by baseball. I think he resented that. I know he resented it.
That's my friend Bowie Kuhn, who was fourth commissioner of baseball, and a very good one indeed. And I think didn't have any better commissioner in his lifetime than Bowie Kuhn. And of course, he got shabby treatment from the owners, but that's what else is new. They don't give everybody shabby treatment. They don't know everybody, but everybody they do know, they give shabby treatment.
He really thought he had become a leper in baseball, that they had put him aside. And he thought he'd been good for baseball, and I think he was good for baseball. And I think he belonged in the Hall of Fame, but he was worried that other fates were at work. And they weren't. Justice was finally done. Happy was put in the Hall of Fame, and he came to Cooperstown. And I'll never forget how thrilled he was to be there, and what a good old daddy he was up there in Cooperstown.
In the spring of '51, Happy's commissionership ended. He was 3 votes shy of having his contract renewed by the owners. Happy put his commissioner's office in Cincinnati so he could look across the river to what he called the Promised Land. Now he would return for good.
Do you think he was disappointed when he was asked to leave?
There's no doubt that he was disappointed when he was asked to leave. I think it came to him at least as a mild shock, if not a major shock.
We will sing one song for my old Kentucky home, for my old Kentucky home, far away.
Welcome home, Happy. A crowd estimated at between 4,500 and 5,000 has gathered to hear the closing campaign address of A.B. Happy Chancer, candidate for the Democratic nomination for governor of Kentucky.
Sometimes in politics the game gets a little rough, but I've always insisted if you can't stand the gas, you ought to get out of the game.
Here they are, all here to see the man who pulled the greatest political upset in modern times, Happy Chancer.
In 1955, Happy was back in the governor's mansion. School desegregation was the issue of the day. Across the South, governors were forced to choose sides.
One day at Clay, the mayor of Clay called me on the telephone and said, "That's my country. That's where I was born."